Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the ideal list of Puccini operas and a couple other things. Now, as some of you may know, I am not an opera nut. I like composers, and if I like a composer and they happen to write operas, then I like their operas. And I really like Puccini. Puccini was a great composer, a fabulous tunesmith, an amazing orchestrator, a really fine dramatist for the most part. And his operas are, they're so beloved, and there's so many recordings of the best of them. So, as always with these idealists, my purpose here is to give you an excellent selection of available recordings from which there are no weak links. And once we have that, if you become an opera nut, you can go nutty and get whatever you want. I do not buy historical recordings, generally speaking. I mean, I own them, but I don't recommend them. They are for my own listening pleasure for specific purposes. And I generally stick to major labels and major singers. Why? Because opera is expensive. Very, very expensive. And if you're going to get recordings, then my goodness, you're going to have to find people who can afford to have a great conductor, a great orchestra, great singers. And that means major productions by major labels for the most part. And, nowadays, where everything is now on video, you may find it more exciting and interesting to watch performances of these things on videos. And the interesting thing about videos is that it seems that money is no object, because the opera houses pay for them for the most part, and they give these things to various labels that issue them. And so, you can just go get a video of one of these things and watch it. I tend not to enjoy videos of operas because I find the production even stupider than the plot most of the time, and it just gets annoying. And opera singers, not the most photogenic of people, and you really ought to see these things live in the theater, where A, you're sitting far enough away so that the protagonists look reasonably attractive, and B, you hear the music in a really good acoustic in real time, because a recording is still a recording. And I think a recording of a stage production is even more alienating and distancing for the most part than a simple recording where you can just lay back and enjoy the music and the singing for its own sake. So anyway, now Puccini wrote a passel of operas, about let me see, there's 10 of them basically, only 7 of which matter. And so we are not going to deal with Le Villi, which actually is kind of cute, and it's like an hour long, and so it's kind of nice, but it's really early, and no one much cares about it. Or Edgar, which people care about even less, and which I will have nothing to do with. I actually like Edgar. It has some beautiful moments, but you don't need it unless you become a diehard Puccini fan. And the other one that you don't need unless you're a diehard Puccini fan is his operetta type thing, La Rondine. Now, this is a mature work, and it's very, very beautiful. And every so often, people feel that guilty because you listen. There aren't that many Puccini operas after all, and you've got the 7 big ones, and you think, oh, it's a mature work. We wrote it just before Iltritico, this last, and Turandot. It's got to be terrific, and it has terrific things in it. But the bottom line with La Rondine is that nobody cares about La Rondine, and so that's just the reality of the repertoire. It may not be your reality as an opera lover, and if you do want to get into that one, then go explore it. Go have fun. There aren't so many recordings that it's going to make any difference, and I don't have to talk about that one either. So, here we go. For all intents and purposes, Puccini operas begin with Manon Lescaut. Now, Manon Lescaut is very, very beautiful, and of course competes with Massenet's Manon, which is equally wonderful and about twice as long, because the advantage of Puccini always is that he was a pithy composer. He was concise. He wanted to keep things moving, which is a wonderful thing. But the problem with Manon Lescaut is that the third act, which takes place on a desert plain outside New Orleans, well, obviously they've never been to New Orleans, If they had been, it would have taken place in a bayou surrounded by alligators or a swamp of some kind. But anyway, so, it's a desert plain outside New Orleans, and it only lasts like 15 minutes. And for that reason, in many performances, Act 3 is run into Act 2, because why have an intermission unless you want to sell more snacks and refreshments and souvenirs and whatnot, and then have everybody go back for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And all that happens is that she dies. I mean, really, it's hardly worth the effort. But other than that, Manon Lescaut is a gorgeous opera with all of the yummy things we like in Puccini. Sumptuous melodies and gorgeous soaring vocal lines and a terrific love story in the middle. It's just wonderful. But my choice for Manon Lescaut is Mirella Franey with Giuseppe Sinopoli, and let's see who else. This is Placido Domingo, Renato Brussong. I mean, this is sort of like the Puccini crowd for the latter half of the 20th century, and we're going to see them more than once. They're great. I mean, they do this stuff fabulously, and I have to say, Sinopoli's Puccini was a little controversial because it was very slow and very lush and very decadent, but boy, does it work well here. I thought this performance was just yummy, and it's gorgeously recorded and fabulously sung by Franey, who we will see more of too. And it's a gorgeous performance of Manon Lescaut. And like I said, there are others that are equally fine, but for my money, that's the one I'm picking. And if you have others, then you can pick them yourself. Next, we get La Bohème. Ah, La Bohème, the ultimate opera for young love, young lovers. I detested La Bohème for many, many, many years because, first of all, I don't care about young love. I wish Mimi would just stop coughing and die at the end. It's become almost the icon of operatic silliness because it doesn't really have a plot. And there's all that comic nonsense about, burning what's-his-name's manuscript in his play to make heat and living in Paris. And, oh, God, it just does nothing for me. But then I actually played La Bohème in the orchestra. And one of the advantages to playing in an opera orchestra, if you're a percussionist, is that most of the time you're doing absolutely nothing. For example, Act 3 of La Bohème, you've got this, what looks very promising, list of percussion instruments, glockenspiel, bass drum, triangle, cymbals, it's like, oh, great, here we go. Well, all that happens in Act 3 of La Bohème, in terms of percussion, I'm not talking about the plot, we don't care about the plot, we care about the percussion parts, is that there's a few tinklings on the glockenspiel at one point, and then me, your friendly bass drummist, gets 5 taps on the bass drum marked quadruple piano, and they're all behind that big tune after Rodolfo and Mimi are having this spat, and and this tune comes in which sounds an awful lot like the opening tune of Melisandre's theme, in Peleus and Melisandre. It's do do boo do 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 do, like that. You know the one, right? And the bass drum goes do do thud do 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 thud. That was my part. But instead of being bored, I thought to myself, well, let me listen to the opera, because I'm sitting there doing nothing. I had my score, because if you think I'm going to count measures of rest, you're out of your bloody mind. I had a full orchestral score, so I know when to come in for my 5 little quadruple piano bass drum taps. And it is glorious music. It really is. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous piece. And beautiful and wonderfully paced. And, okay, yeah, Mimi dies in the end, and it's very tragic. And Puccini had this sort of psychotic thing about finding beautiful, young, innocent creatures that he makes fall in love and then tortures to death. I mean, it was a real pathological thing. They've written, psychological studies about Puccini's little girls and his need to, kill them all. But it's a wonderful opera, and there are many beautiful performances of it. I've had a great affection for a long time for the old Schulte recording with Caballé and Domingo. I thought that was just great. And then there was, of course, the Beecham with Victoria de los Angeles and Jussi Björling. I mean, Beecham's Bohème is a classic. But, you got to have a Carillon Puccini, and Bohème is my pick because it just doesn't have a weak link anywhere. You've got Pavarotti in one of his best ever roles as Rodolfo, Mirella Franey again, who is the ultimate Mimi probably, Rolando Panerai is Marcello, and Elizabeth Harwood is Musetta, Nikolai Gyarov, who became Mr. Mirella Franey at one point, is Colleen, Schaunard is Johnny Maffeo. Anyway, it's with the Berlin Philharmonic. It's gorgeous. This is just so bloody beautiful. It really has no weak links. And it's, what can you say? The Carillon Bohème is one to get for sure. There will be others again to get, and you may want to get them. The worst Bohème, by the way, hands down, bar none, is Bernstein's. Holy cow. Bernstein thought it would be a good idea to have young, inexperienced singers in the role and then force them to sing the music at half the normal tempo. and the result was a predictable disaster. God, it's awful. Just awful. And it's just terrible. So avoid the Bernstein-like death. The others that I've mentioned are all terrific. If you love the opera, you probably already have them, and more. And that's the story of La Bohème. Okay, after that comes Tosca. Tosca's great because you have all those wonderful stories about obnoxious sopranos jumping off the parapet at the very end, only to have the annoyed stagehands throw her back. She's very, very irritating. It's very, very difficult. Some of these there are sopranos who wouldn't jump at all, so they sort of run off, anyway, and ignore the part where they jump off the parapet. I mean, so many things can happen at the end of Tosca. And, when you talk about recordings of Tosca, you're always talking about the Maria Callas, Maria Callas, Victor de Sabata one, the mono Callas, because she remade it in stereo with Petra when she was way past her prime. But the mono Tosca is legendary, absolutely legendary, and deservedly so. She's an amazing Tosca. She really brings the character to life. Everyone else is terrific. It's a great Tosca, no question about it. But it is in mono. And, everyone should have the Callas Tosca because it's almost like a historical icon. You know what I mean? It's so famous and sort of such iconic. Again, I can only use the same word. Exemplar of her art that you really need to have it. But when I like listening to Tosca, because Tosca, you could play Tosca like a symphony. It's just beautiful. It just goes. It's gorgeous to listen to. I like this one. This is the Caballé. And Caballé and José Carreras, who was young and fresh and in fabulous voice. And Caballé was in great voice. And she's gorgeous in this role. And Ingvar Vixel as Scarpia. And this is with Colin Davis and the Covent Garden Forces. It is gorgeously recorded by Phillips. I mean, I got this. I tell you how I got this. I mean, it's just funny back in the day because I didn't know who any of these people were. I was a kid, I was in my teens and I was bicycling around town. And there was a five and dime store. I mean, that's what it was. It was a really, one of those cheapy discount. It was called King's, I think. And or Kresge's or something like that. It was in this sort of drab strip mall back in Milford, Connecticut, where I was growing up on Cherry Street. And I went in there and they had a record section along with, cheap crappy clothing and all the other junk that they sold. And the record section never had anything classical, but I was always looking for classical stuff. And I'm going through this record section, just pawing through it, full of, $1.99, K-Tel and all that stuff. And sitting there on Phillips was this Tosca, the Colin Davis Caballé Tosca. Remember those Phillips boxes? They were these big deluxe boxes, and they had beautiful styrofoam packing in the middle. And this one had like some sort of oil stain, machine oil or something had spilled on it. And it cost like $2. I mean, what it was doing there, I had no idea. So I snapped it up with my lawn mowing money, and wow, was I hooked after that. That was my first real Puccini experience. And, I'm not an imprint guy. I don't usually care about my first recordings, but this was a great recording, and it still is. And, afterwards, of course, I heard Tosca and the two Leontine Prices and everybody else's, and, Scotto and everybody. But boy, oh boy, it's a great Tosca. And it does have happy childhood memories, and so I'm sticking with the Caballé Carreras Tosca for Tosca. And after that comes Madama Flutterby. Madame Butterfly, the great Madame Butterfly, the ultimate sob opera. I mean, if you're not a weeping puddle when that opera is over, then something is wrong with you, for sure. I love Madame Butterfly. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's got Un Bel Dì, one of the great arias in the history of the world. Puccini, by the way, has a very interesting aria format. The way it works, and it's so simple and so effective, is that the orchestra plays the tune, the big tune, and the voice only sings bits of it as the aria proceeds. But as it goes, and as the orchestra picks up, more and more of it, it gets louder and more passionate, the voice sings more and more of the tune until at the climax, the singer finally gets the tune, the whole tune, and just cuts loose, and they all do it, and it's thrilling. Oh my God! And Un Bel Dì is one of the classic cases of that. The other big one that I think you can follow very simply is In Questa Regia from Turandot, which is just amazing. Amazing. So, what do we do for Butterfly? Well, the best tam-tam at the end, when she kills herself, she's like, bom, bom, is Carillons. I don't even think it's a real tam-tam. I think it's an electronic simulacrum, because nothing sounds like that. Oh my God, it's marvelous. It is so heavy-duty with the Vienna Philharmonic. It's absolutely glorious in Mirella Franey. But my best Madame Butterfly, and my choice, is Barbarolli. Probably the best thing Barbarolli ever did, aside from English string music. That disc. This is a great Madame Butterfly, full of, Barbarolli's typical passion and love for every single note and every bar. But you've got Renato Scotto and Carlo Bergonzi, the classy tenor, the one who was always stylish and intelligent and effective, and Rolando Panerai. I actually saw Carlo Bergonzi at the end of his career do Tosca with Shirley Verrett at the National Opera in Washington, D.C. And boy, was that something to see, because, as an artist, he wore this funny little, artist suit. He had his little beanie hat and this little clown suit, and he was this tiny, short little man who was totally round. I mean, he was shaped like a piece of fruit, like an apple. And you had Shirley Verrett, who was a very striking, statuesque, and beautiful woman. And boy, when they were doing their love scenes, I mean, you were just going, oh no, they're not. It was really something. And actually, I sat next to Helmut Schmidt, the German chancellor, who was there at the opera. I remember that evening quite well. And when they embraced, she just took his head and stuffed it into her cleavage, and he was not coming out. He looked like the happiest guy on the planet. It was quite a scene, let me tell you. But he was a wonderful tenor, and this is really just... And Scotto, I mean, let's talk about Scotto, a Kunstdiva, a smart singer. Always, she was a bit like Maria Callas. Her voice did not last all that long. It started to get a little frayed and shrill, but she used it. She knew how to use it with intelligence and incredible expressive punch, and nowhere more so than here. And here she was young and in fresh voice, and it is glorious. Absolutely glorious. So this is the Madame Butterfly to get, in my opinion, of course. And now, what do we do after Madame Butterfly? Well, after Madame Butterfly came, oh dear, La Fanciulla del West. The opera that ends with the fabulous duet, Oh California Addio, and has, guys running around going doo-dah, 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 and Wokal, the Indian squaw, who goes ugh-wug. That's her entire part. I mean, No one is ever going to make a case that this is one of Puccini's best operas. It is perhaps his most musically interesting. It uses lots of impressionist harmonies. It's extraordinarily orchestrated. There's a part at the end of Act One for something called a phonica, and no one even knows what a phonica is. It doesn't exist anymore. It was some kind of keyed percussion thing, they think. So no one ever plays the phonica. And of course it has that great scene where Minnie has the poker game for the life of her lover, the bandit, and she's playing the sheriff in poker, and she's cheating. She cheats, and there's like blood dripping from the ceiling where he's hiding because he's been like shot. Oh, it's just melodrama. It's by, the play was David Belasco, of course, who wrote the Madame Butterfly. And Puccini, treated the American West as like any other exotic location. It was like Japan. And so he didn't care. But the most wonderful part, actually, I think, is the opening. The opening scene when Minnie comes swinging in the bar during the fight. She comes in and this incredible tune is playing. Yeah, da, da, da. And the chorus is going, hello, Minnie. But the best is the tempo indication, which is andante vibrato, which tells you all you need to know about performance technique at the beginning of the 20th century. Pace Roger Norrington. Take a look at that sucker. It's amazing. So, for Puccini fans, it's a must-have. But boy, to see, Birgit Nilsson in her cowboy outfit, it's almost as good as her Salome outfit. I may stick that thing on my worst ever opera covers in the world, or record label, or album covers, because, Birgit Nilsson did quite a few of them. But I think the best one, which also has a really good cover, is, let's face it, the Zubin Mehta with Carol Neblett, Placido Domingo, Cheryl Milnes, all those people. First of all, it's the best sounding. It sounds just wonderful. And you've got to hear the orchestra because it's so glorious. The orchestration's amazing. And Carol Neblett, this is her greatest outing on disc. She does quite a good job. She really does. She doesn't have the most beautiful voice, but she's very, very effective. She's no Birgit Nilsson, but then again, in this opera, I'm not sure Birgit Nilsson was Birgit Nilsson. And it's lots of fun. It's just lots of fun, and you just take it for what it is. And of course, you've got Domingo again, who's sort of the ultimate Puccini guy for a lot of these operas. He shows up so often in these operas; it's impossible not to duplicate. And Pavarotti too. They were the people doing Puccini. So that's La Fanciulla del West, the girl of the Golden West, as we call it in English. After that came La Rondine, which we don't have to deal with, and then Iltritico. Now, the problem with Tritico is that, it's three operas. It's Il Tabarro, which is a wonderful Verismo piece of like schlock, and everybody should love it. And Suor Angelica, which everybody finds tacky and sentimental. Although I saw a production at the Met that was supposed to be sung, I think, by Teresa Stratos, who of course canceled because that's all she did. And her part was taken over by Diana Soviero, I forget. It was Soviero. She was so amazing that the orchestra gave her a standing ovation after that performance. When they told her baby had died, she hit the decks with an impact that I thought was going to knock her unconscious. It was really, really dramatic and absolutely fabulous. And then the last one, of course, is Gianni Schicchi, which has O mio babbino caro, the world's shortest famous opera aria. It's like 1.5 minutes long. In fact, there are three sort of incredibly short arias that you should all know about. One is O mio babbino caro, which is 1 minute and a bit. The other is Let Me Wander Not Unseen, from Handel's L'Allegro, Il Penseroso and Il Moderato, which I put in the last number 7 edition of the World's Greatest Melodies. That's about 1 minute 40 seconds long. But the shortest opera ever is Quand'ero Paggio from Verdi's Falstaff, which is like 28 seconds or something for the entire aria. Believe it or not, it's amazing. So you can go get your opera highlights disc if you only want 28 seconds. It's perfect. Anyway, we were talking about Gianni Schicchi. So the bits of Tritico are often performed separately. You can buy separate recordings of them. There are some very fine separate recordings of Schicchi and Tabarro particularly. Less so Suor Angelica because, nobody has any confidence in that piece. It's really very beautiful. And it works really well within the context of the three of them. It really does. So, but I like to get things as a set. And for my money, the best Tritico is a newish one. It's this one with Antonio Pappano. Antonio Pappano with let's see, who we got? In Il Tabarro, you've got Maria Gulagino and Carlo Guelfi and Neil Shikoff, of course. And let's see, you've got, Angelina Gheorghiu and Roberto Alagna. And in Suor Angelica, you've got this Christina, Gallardo Domas, who's absolutely wonderful as Angelica. And in Gianni Schicchi, you've got Angelina Gheorghiu and Jose Van Dam, and it's Felicity Palmer and Alagna and the whole crew. They're three really, really strong performances. So if you want to get a Tritico as a set, and you might as well get them all and then branch out, and get these other ones if you want them. I think the Pappano is a great way to go. You really can't go wrong with it. And finally, we come to Turandot. Now, Turandot was, of course, the opera that Puccini didn't finish, and the completion by Franco Alfano is horrible beyond anyone's capacity to express horribleness. It's so bad. And I remember the first time I heard it, the recording I had, my first one was the Leinsdorf with Birgit Nilsson and Jussi Björling, which is one of the great recordings of Turandot. And the only problem I have with it is that, the orchestral playing is kind of raw, and, the conducting is Leinsdorf. It's kind of slam, bang, thank you, ma'am, slam, bam, whatever you call it. And and it's a little bit cut. I hate cuts because the cuts always occur in the ping, pang, and pong scene at the beginning of part 2, which I think is the best scene in the whole opera. It has the best music. It's the most interesting to listen to. It has the best tunes. It's fantastic. You should never cut it. Never, ever, 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 ever. But, and Birgit Nilsson's 2 recordings. She did it twice. There's the EMI one, which I don't think is as good. And, they cut that little tiny scene. What's the point? I don't see any point. I mean, yes, Puccini wanted to move it along, but there's such great characters, ping, pang, and pong. So anyway, what to do with the end of Turandot? Well, Franco Alfano did it miserably. Luciano Berio did a completion. It's just as bad. The problem with Turandot is that there is no way you are going to believe that all of a sudden Turandot has a change of heart after having Liu stab herself when she's being tortured to death. And Calaf, who is the most insensitive pig in all of opera, there's no way Puccini's going to make these people believable characters. And he does that in all of his other operas, one way or another. But Turandot was a real problem, and Puccini got stuck with the ending because it really was a comedy, and it needed to be played that way. There were ways to I think my roommate in college had the best way of ending Turandot. I really think it would be absolutely perfect. He said, okay, the crowd rebels and kills everybody. End of opera. And they all live happily ever after that. I think that's perfect. That's exactly what I would do. In fact, what I would do is, once Liu is dead, I would take the closing bars of Saint-Saëns, Samson and Delilah, when he rips the temple down. So Liu is lying there dead, and, there's a little thing of the piccolo, and it's going, doo, doo, doo. Then there's a silence. And then you just go, yeah, da, 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 crash, 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 pang, the crowd screams, da-da, but it's over. How's that for the ending of Turandot? Absolutely perfect, because then you don't have to hear the stupid love duet and, the recapitulation of Nessun Dorma at the end. And, oh, God, it's just so annoying. And, of course, there's, the Met production, which is the most cluttered thing in the entire world. It has more people and more stuff. I mean, it looks like your old Jewish grandmother's living room, with all the Chinese decor. Because, as my grandmother said, every room needs a touch of Chinese. Well, that's all I could think of was my grandmother's living room. The room no one's allowed to go into. You just look at it. But anyway, so Turandot. I got to go with Zubin Mehta, who did this Fanciulla del West. He's a great Puccini conductor. And this is Sutherland, Caballé, Pavarotti, Ghiarov. You are never going to get a better cast for Turandot. And the amazing thing about it, Caballé sang Turandot with Alan Lombard on EMI. She sang Turandot. She never should be singing Turandot. But Sutherland had the voice for it. You have to remember, she began life as a Wagnerian soprano. And this is one of the greatest things she ever did. Her diction is wonderfully clear. You understand everything she's singing about. And boy, has she got the voice. It was terrific. Absolutely terrific. And Turandot herself, as a character, does not have to ooze passion until the very end, when she becomes this sort of like simpering wimpette. And, who cares at that point? So, and it's also the best recorded, the best played. Karajan could have done it, except that he was too slow, and he had Katia Ricciarelli, who was terrible. I love Barbara Hendricks as Liu, though. Wow, isn't she hot? Woohoo! That's what, one of the reviews of the Karajan recording said they should have called the opera Liu, because Barbara Hendricks is so sexy and kiddish. You think Koloff is like out of his mind for preferring Turandot, And there's, of course, the question of how do you pronounce Turandot? Is it Turandot or Turandot? The question is, the answer is you do both. It makes no difference. Nobody cares. And most people hedge their bets by having a very soft T. So you say Turandot. See, it may be there. It may not be. And nobody cares. So that's perfectly fine. It's absolutely wonderful that way. Absolutely wonderful. So Sutherland, Caballé, Maida, Pavarotti. How can you go wrong, really? It's such a great cast that really there have been few other recordings since then, and none of them have matched it. It's that simple. It really is. So there you have your Puccini operas. However, for the sake of completeness, because Puccini was such a great tunesmith, we like his tunes, whether they're being sung or not. And so I think you should get Puccini Without Words, featuring Andrei Kostelanetz and his orchestra, and also the Columbia Symphony Orchestra, because this is a collection of a couple different things that they stuck on CD. You get O Mio Babino Caro, because you have to, and then highlights from La Boheme, Butterfly, and Tosca. All the big tunes with none of the singing. And I got it. I love these Opera Without Words discs. I mean, I really do. We'll talk about more of them. Don't worry, as the mood takes us. But wow, this is just great to have all these glorious Puccini tunes. And remember, Puccini wrote two orchestral pieces. There's this Preludio Sinfonico and the Capriccio Sinfonico, which actually contains, I think, the opening theme from La Boheme. That that thing. That's in one of these pieces. And you also get the Witch's Sabbath, the intermezzo from Le Villi, on this wonderful disc with Riccardo Muti and the Scala Orchestra. Lots of people have done these pieces. Chailly did them all. You can find them rather easily. But there are these two pieces of symphonic music to complete your ideal Puccini list. You should have them if you want them. And we are now in business as far as Puccini goes. Very, very simple. Fortunately, there are only 7 operas we need to worry about, which makes it manageable. I also think that's one of the things that makes Puccini so popular. The fact that, we limit, there's value in scarcity. And so we limit the number of pieces we cherish, and everybody does them. Everybody does them. So keep on listening, folks. Get your Puccini collection in shape. Go for it. Take care.